The last time we gathered for midweek worship, Christina offered a message that reflected on the fact that some acknowledge September as Creation Justice Month, and that though we are in the midst of many challenging dynamics, some imagination and hope is warranted and required, actually, to see a way forward. We looked at the video Message from the Future, and we're reminded of the power of creative thinking, creative expression, and sharing about what may come. Today, I would remind us again that in the midst of all of the violent upheaval, civil strife, armed conflict, and political turmoil, the earliest friends, Quakers in the 1600s, were pretty sure that the world was actually physically coming to an end. Now, by the second generation of the religious society, they began to think of the concept of the inbreaking of the reign of God as more of a spiritual and ethical invitation. But at first, for years, they felt like they were in the middle of the true end, that it was all coming down. Today, once again, I find it easy to look around and feel like we're nearing the end. In addition to violent upheaval, civil strife, armed conflict, and political turmoil, there's the realities of ecologically extractive commercial processes and various racial, ethnic, and class prejudices, which mean that there's not only an environmental crisis, but a widening gap in wealth within the US and globally also. For example, in 1820, taking all of the countries together, the per capita income of Europe was 3 times that of all of the countries in Africa. By the year 2000, it was 13 times larger. In 2013, Oxfam calculated that the richest 85 individuals in the world controlled the same amount of wealth as did the poorest 3,585,000,000. The richest 85 people have the same amount of wealth as the poorest 3.58 billion. To make matters worse, within some of those economically developing nations, the Western, largely American, model of growth has become the model to emulate. So that, for example, although India is still the place with the largest concentration of poverty in a single country, it's also one of the sites of rapid wealth growth in the hands of a very rich elite with an emerging middle class. So, to reflect on all of this, to look around and know that the changing climate is fueled increased wildfires, hurricanes, and flooding, and then to realize that the Center for Research on Energy and Clean Air reports that the Chinese government is still building one coal plant every week, well, it might be time to consider that the world is ending again. But here's the thing. When our spiritual forebears were under the impression that it was all coming down, their response was not to sit it out and wait for heaven, but instead to begin the process of figuring out how to live now as it will be in heaven. To live in a manner that gives witness to the fact that another way is possible and that there is a guidance we can seek out. The Spirit of God that is a life and power that took away the occasion of all wars. And today, I think we're called to that same seeking, to turn towards that life and power that takes away the occasion for all coal plants. That life and power that takes away the occasion for widening wealth gaps, the light and life and power that takes away the occasion for the prison industrial complex and its ravaging of the lives of so many brown and black siblings, the life and power that takes away the occasion for us to think we can just wait. As some of you know, I am one of those rare breed of beasts known as a Quaker theologian. I work teaching and writing about how we think about God and how that encourages us to be and act in the world. Specifically, I focus on what's called liberation theology, which is the tradition rooted in the ideas that the true church manifests in places where there are concrete changes being done and actual physical flourishing for those who are poor, struggling, and oppressed. As I close today, I want to share with you some of the words of the earliest writers of liberation theology, a Brazilian scholar whose name is Rubem Alves, whose words from 1968 still speak to our moment today. Alves notes that when things are at their worst, we are inclined to feel most passive and frozen by fear. To dare to dream, hope, and imagine a better future is sometimes accused of being naive. And it can be naive, he says, if your dreaming closes off your eyes and ears and heart from seeing and feeling the suffering around you. No. What Alves hopes for is a recognition of the pain and our complicity in it, and then a kind of dreaming that makes possible the work to achieve what might come next. Our hope, our imagination, can be a way to pierce through the forces and figures that say things are too hard to change.
Yeah.
This is what Alf says. Hope is the intuition that the imagination can be more real and reality less real than we had thought. It is the sensation that the last word does not belong to the brutality of facts with their oppression and repression. It is the suspicion that reality is far more complex than realism would have us believe, that the frontiers of the possible are not to be determined by the limits of the present, and that miraculously and surprisingly, life is readying the creative event that will open the way to freedom and resurrection. What he's calling for there isn't a denial of reality that permits us to pretend that things are fine and nothing needs to be done. Far from that. What we're being called to name is the practices that hold us back and the practices that will lead us to what comes next. In a time when we can be overwhelmed by the facts and figures of pain around us, let us remember there is a guide who can turn our minds and work to a hope for something more than the way things currently are. The book of Isaiah has God remind us of this. Do not remember the former things, or consider the things of old. I am about to do a new thing. Now it springs forth. Do you not perceive it? I will make a way in the wilderness and rivers in the desert. This new thing has already been seeded, friends. Our path is to seek it out,
Mhm.
to work with each other to nurture it, and cast aside all of the calls and taunts of the world that say such a justice is not possible. God is readying the event that will open the way to freedom and resurrection. And so we turn towards that inner teacher and ask for a glimpse of what it might be, of that justice we can imagine is coming next. As we turn to prayer today, the query I would offer is this. What do we imagine greater justice might look like? Is Spirit already lifting something up that we need to see? What do we imagine a greater justice might look like? And is Spirit already lifting something up we need to see?